the state government, local city council, and the mayor finally came together and created a process to create a plan for rebuilding the city. It's called the Unified New Orleans Plan. It just got the ink just dried in mid-August, and the Rockefeller Foundation basically came down because the city went from a planning department of like 40 to 50 staff pre-Katrina to about 10 to 15 post-Katrina because they were just out of money. So Rockefeller Foundation came down, threw down a big chunk of money, said we're going to fund the planning process. This is it, and it's not perfect, but it's gotten everybody, okay, here's the process that we're going to use to create a plan. And they've learned from the two previous planning efforts, watching them go down in flames. So now they realize, wow, we have to have public participation. And so that's where we've gotten pulled in to help them design that. And how do you make that genuinely participatory, genuinely empower citizens to make a lot of those key decisions so that it's not constantly getting pulled out by elites and then screwing people over. So here's the basic sequence this fall of public meetings they're going to be having. They've got one track that are district meetings. So there are 13 planning districts in New Orleans that are dealing with different neighborhoods each. And then there are citywide meetings dealing with the macro issues, levies, how much overall public housing is being rebuilt, what's the overall footprint of the city, what areas are going to be stored into wetlands, et cetera, et cetera. So we are helping them with a bunch of these meetings, but most of our work in organizing a very, very large-scale participatory process is focused on Community Congress 2. In the district meetings, there's pretty good level of engagement going on at the local level in New Orleans. However, more than half the population is displaced right now. Huge pockets of people in Houston, Atlanta, Dallas, some in Memphis, some in Jackson, Mississippi. Those folks are kind of totally shut out of the process right now. Not too surprisingly, those are the poor and predominantly African American communities that haven't been able to afford to move back, and they don't have any jobs to move back to, or housing to move back to. So our task has been how do you get those folks involved in this in a real way. So we're going to be doing some interesting stuff around getting folks to a local library. We're setting up 35 library resource centers so that folks can go to a library. We'll have a whole set of resources about the whole process, and then a dedicated computer. And on the dates that we're doing that, we'll have a facilitator at each library facilitating a dialogue as they're going through the district plans through a live webcast, and then also with a copy of the map for their district, and trying to get some real-time feedback from folks in the diaspora into the planning process on those days. For Community Congress 2, the vision will look more like this. It'll be 6 large-scale interactive meetings involving 4,000 to 5,000 people total, a couple thousand people in New Orleans directly, and then groups of 500 to 1,000 people in the major diaspora cities, and then also some satellite dialogue work happening with 50 to 100 people in places like Detroit, Chicago, Philly, other areas where the pockets of displaced people are much smaller. This is actually a shot of a meeting we did in New York City in 2002 about Ground Zero and what to rebuild at the site of the trade centers. This was a conversation involving 5,000 people, local Manhattan residents, and then also survivors of the Trade Center attacks to talk about what should be rebuilt there and how much of it should be memorial, how much of it should be office space, housing, etc. So it's a similar process of what we're proposing for the Community Congress 2, because that is the meeting where they'll create a set of scenarios that really deal with the biggest issues at play. How much housing, where is it being rebuilt, what neighborhoods are being rebuilt and whatnot, et cetera, and really laying out totally different scenarios that you can go. You know, you can do the Urban Land Institute model, or you can do a more focus on the poorest areas model, et cetera, putting that out for public to really get the public engaging with that, and then totally creating the space for them to say all these plans suck and you guys need to go back to the drawing board, but creating that space so they got some fleshed out options for rebuilding the city.